Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
I'm Egbert, the owner of this station. Check out my website at egbert.com. That's E-G-G-B-U-R-T, egbert.com. Now it's back to Brad and John. Check out their website at bjshow.co. The BJ Show? Come on, guys. Anyway, here's B and J.
Check it out every day. We chop up the show. We put it up there. You can find it in the podcast. There's a little podcast, I don't want to call it a little widget, something like that you can look at all the different podcasts. And then if you go down further in the blog post, you can see that particular day show, a little bit of recap, tells you what all the segments were. John always does, and the real nice job is I put the stuff in, then John goes in and cleans it up and makes it all look good, right?
I add a link or two, and occasionally I might fix a typo. You know, that's kind of my obsessive compulsive thing, Brad. I gotta if I see a punctuation thing or a word spelled wrong, I gotta fix it. I can't rest until I fix it.
And I do appreciate that. Okay, the Dr. Phil thing. Dr. Phil has come out really with guns blazing on the immigration thing. Have you seen this recently?
Yeah, I have. And let's also pair this up too. He has also said some remarkably sensible things about COVID.
Yeah, what's interesting as well too. I mean, I'm going like, okay, for a while, Dr. Phil was like, you know, I used to be able to do Dr. Phil real well. I lost my impression, but you know, he got to the point where, if you know the whole story behind Dr. Phil, he came to prominence when he was a regular guest on the Oprah show. He was one of Oprah's, fans. Or she loved Dr. Phil, and then he spun off his own show, sort of like the Dr. Oz kind of thing. And he sort of stayed away from, I guess you could call it mainline politics, but man, he's in the news big time. Matter of fact, he's saying enough is enough with the crime wave caused by illegal immigration. And it's to the point where it's like, okay, I guess when Dr. Phil gets upset, people are finally going, things are really bad, right?
Well, and and this is, what they say, what parents and teachers say, Brad, which is like a teachable moment. When I see someone that originated from a source like Oprah Winfrey, my knee-jerk reaction is, oh, good grief, they're going to be parroting whatever pharma narrative or liberal narrative there is out there. They're not going to say anything interesting. But it's a good example of the fact that sometimes people that are in that celebrity realm, on occasion, do say some things with merit.
Right, and he's essentially, matter of fact, it's interesting, he was specifically responding to, I'll read this, to a viral TikTok video of an illegal immigrant holding a baby who said the child, quote, purportedly an American citizen, is his gold mine to shirk work and benefit from subsidies. So essentially, and what's interesting is, a lot of people don't realize, but we are one of the few countries in the world that has the immigration system we have, and essentially one of the interesting aspects of what they call the anchor baby. And the anchor baby, meaning that, like, if John was from Honduras and he brought his wife from Honduras, and once they crossed and let's say said she was 8 months pregnant, and they cross the American border, they come into Phoenix, and at 9 months, John's wife gives birth. That baby is an American citizen. So you can see the problem right away that even though John and his wife, I'm giving you, a hypothetical, you and your wife, even though you're not American citizens, you have a son who is an American citizen, or a daughter, whichever the one the baby is, and I'm getting in trouble with KWMU, aren't I? I'm essentially saying it's either.
You're suggesting that only men and women can procreate, Brad.
And I'm suggesting.
And the guys that were on St. Louis on the air yesterday would be very upset about that.
And I'm suggesting it's either a boy or a girl, right? So
you are. And Brad, and to get back to the work thing for 1 second, though, it talked about how this guy was talking about how the baby is his gold mine. I was watching a video last night that was doing a little bit of research here, and it was about Bear's layoff program and Bear's whole dynamic shared ownership branding of their layoff program, and they were talking about the German Works Council. And the point is, I dealt with the German Works Council, and I didn't deal with them directly, but colleagues of mine did when we were going through some previous layoffs and things of that regard. And we were building our messaging around this. And the point is, countries like Germany say, hey, company, if you are going to lay anybody off, you better lay off Americans before you lay off Germans. And if you're going to bring some of those Americans over here to Germany, you're going to tell us exactly how many days they're going to be in the country. And did you know this, Brad, the idea of a trailing spouse in some of these countries? Are you familiar with this concept?
I've heard that. Give me a little bit more information on it.
So as an example, I had a friend from the United States that went over to Germany to work for Bayer, and their spouse is called a trailing spouse. If you go over there to work and your spouse isn't theirs expressly to work, that your spouse cannot get a full-time job in Germany. Did you know that, Brad?
Oh, yeah, I did know there. And see,
now, I mean, I had no idea, and maybe I'm naive, but I had no idea that your spouse can't just go out and get a full-time job. Now they can, which of course leads the trailing spouse to, maybe be around the house and raise the kids or do whatever you need to do. But the German government places a priority on protecting jobs and its economic security for its own citizens. Isn't that amazing?
See, that's the point I made about the United States has this very, very, very open immigration system, whereas in other countries, I mean, like, you can't even become. As a matter of fact, there are some countries where the only way you can become a citizen of that country is by making a large donation to that country. And and if you think I'm kidding, there are a lot of rich people that decide, I'm tired of the United States. I want to move to, I'm just going to throw out a country, Belize, okay? If you go kind of become a Belize citizen, and that's a bad example because I'm not if that's true or not, but there are certain countries around the world that essentially say, you want to become a citizen of this country? It'll cost you $1 million. And you're going like, well, no, hold on a minute. No. If I was someone from any other country in the in the world and would decide I want to become a citizen of the United States, it doesn't cost me anything because of the fact.
You just come and hopefully you could show up with a woman that's 8 months pregnant and you could have an anchor baby. I got us off Dr. Phil though. I interrupted you, Brad.
No. I just think it's fascinating. He's come out for this, and I think the interesting part of this is that I don't know if you know what's happening on Thursday. This is sort of interesting. Do you know the dueling border stories that are happening on Thursday?
Oh yeah, so both Trump and Biden will be at the border, right?
Yes, it's bizarre. It's like I think Trump is in Eagle Pass and Biden is somewhat west of that. Exactly, I don't know exactly where they're at, but it's like to the point where like, okay, finally, now Trump. Now, going back to Trump, once again, go back to 2016. What did he get, applauded about, and at the same time derided about the fact that he's going to build the wall?
Right.
As a matter of fact, there's a famous news story, I don't know if you know this or not, that's been covered recently. Supposedly, there's a hole in the wall somewhere near San Diego. Have you heard this story?
No, I haven't heard the story.
Okay, there's a hole in the wall that literally has someone, has broken a hole through the wall, and this has become very, very, very well known to the point where over the past week, I think if you look this up, over the past week, you can see numerous news crews who've driven to this spot along the American-Mexican border. I believe it's east of San Diego. I'll see if I can dig it up maybe before we get off the air here. And they have gone and covered it. Once again, numerous news crews. So in other words, if you're watching the news, anybody can watch the news and think, oh my God, there's a hole there. Don't you think the government would say, hey, let's go fix that hole? No, they won't. Because
of course not. What I love are when we get real, objective, factual anecdotes, like when Dr. Bob was on and he was talking about the number of illegals that come in every given day or week or whatever it was, and how that could fill the population of O'Fallon. And I also like how, I'm not sure if it was Senator Schmidt or Congressman Burleson was talking about how much money we give to Ukraine in any given day, and how much of that could be, how many more border agents we could put on the border for what we send to Ukraine in a day.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing about it is sometimes, and you know this with what you do with your public, hold on, my phone's going there, with your public relations career, whatever you want to call it, when you were with Bayer Monsanto, a lot of this is just to the point where it's like, okay, it's awareness type thing, and how you're trying to essentially spin the story. And I have never understood why in the world the Democrats have just sort of, especially with Biden administration, just turned a blind eye to the border. And I think the other problem that I have is that if you go back, and I'm going to say, you, Brad, you're an old guy. Back in the day, when the immigrants came to the United States, for the most part, the Eastern Europeans, the Western Europeans, and from all over the world, they wanted to become Americanized. That was what they wanted. They wanted to
exactly
assimilate.
Right,
they wanted to be. I mean, I have friends of mine that through the years of several Italian friends that their mother or their grandfather and grandma. Matter of fact, I know someone who's I won't call her out on this, but I have someone that's a client on this very radio station. That their father immigrated from Greece. And, technically they are first generation. Matter of fact, both her mother and father immigrated from Greece, and she's technically first generation as far as, a natural born American. And she talks about all the time about her father wanted to become an American. He wanted to have American ways. At the same point in time, he wanted to still respect his culture from Greece, speak the language, which she does, and still have that, pay homage to where they came from. But the fact is, they're Americans now. And there seems to be more and more of the fact that you see this happening in Michigan with a lot of the Islamics in Michigan who really don't want to assimilate. They want to create their own little area. Now, I get it. That's just the way things are. We have the Hill in St. Louis. You have other parts of the country where they have what they call, Chinatown. And
sure.
Even to the point where in South City, we have a couple other ethnic groups, ethnic nationality groups.
Remember when the Bosnians came in the 90s and it was a big deal?
We have Vietnamese as well, too. And for the most part, you don't hear too many problems with those communities.
You don't. And the difference is in the 90s, and then still with some of these ethnic groups, the embrace of assimilation. And if you consider cultural assimilation to be a dirty word and an offense to your original culture, then you will not want to assimilate. Then you will not want to learn the English language. You will think it's okay for professional athletes to kneel for the national anthem and intentionally disrespect our country. But if you focus on assimilation and you think, can you maintain your cultural identity and still assimilate and identify as an American? And the people that grew up on the Hill would say yes. The Irish and Germans and Italians in St. Louis would say yes.
Exactly.
Many of the Bosnians that came here in the 90s would say yes. But today it seems a little different, doesn't it, Brad?
Well, I once again, I come from from a family that my father is first generation American. His father was, an illegal immigrant. I'm second generation American on my father's side. But more importantly, all my heritage is German. They wanted to become Americans. They wanted to speak English. They wanted to learn the language. They wanted to become. My great aunt ran a bar in North City that I've told stories about before. My grandfather was an attorney, who actually worked for the city of St. Louis for a number of years. Did I ever tell you that crazy weird story?
No, you didn't.
My mom used to always. When my grandfather on my mother's side died when I was very young. I was only like 2 years old. And the last couple of years he was alive, he was not in the best of health. And my mom used to go down, he worked at City Hall and he was an attorney for the city of St. Louis. My mom used to go down and take him lunch and they would go out for a walk. And they would walk around City Hall, the same City Hall that's right there with back in the day, there was no homeless encampment around it, but that's a whole nother story. And my mom used to always laugh about the fact that when they were walking around, that there were people that would know who my grandfather was. And they would say, "Hi, Mr. Winter, how you doing?" And my mother used to say, "How do you know that person?" And my grandfather would say, "Oh, they sue the city all the time. I see them in court all the time." They were people that tripped over sidewalks and stuff like that, and they would take the city to court, stuff like that. But, once again, I guess I'm just frustrated. Another frustration. I heard this morning on 97.1, okay? And I've been following this. The Fox School District is talking about going to a 4-day school a week, okay? I think this is laziness personified. I just think it's absolute positive laziness. And one of the attributes that the Fox the Fox district officials are promoting is the fact it's going to make it easy for them to recruit teachers.
Of course, that's the selling point. Now, Brad, here's where I disagree with you. Or maybe this is an area of common ground on this. I know we're up against the end of the show, but here's, I think, a compromise. Why don't we just go to a 3-day school week?
No, I say...
Then a majority of the days of the week, nobody has to work or go to school, Brad.
John, I will.
Just a 3-day. Look, who doesn't want to have let's do the math here. What is that? I'm not great at math. Who doesn't want to have most of the week be a weekend?
John,
go to school Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Let me pull up a story that I sent to someone this morning when we were talking about this. There's a study that talked about that if you go to a 6-day school week, it increases the students' retention of information. 6-day school week. And there are some countries in the world that do 6 days a week school already. So,
yeah, but Brad, how are you gonna get any teachers? You don't think teachers deserve a 5-day weekend?
No, I don't think they deserve a 5-day weekend.
What about a 6-day week? Why don't we just have school 1 day a week, Brad?
Once again,
it'll be like Sunday school.
The teachers that complain about they don't make any money, go to Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey is an authority on finance. Go to Dave Ramsey's book. 5 classes of millionaires. Teachers are number 3, and yet
they are. And real quick, or you can go to johncombest.com and click on the tag called "Education Professionals Complaining About the Profession They Chose."
Right, and they say they don't make any money, but yet, according to Dave Ramsey, who is an authority on this,
the millionaires.
The millionaires.
We can't be millionaires till we get out of here, Brad. We got to pay bills, right?
Third class of millionaires in the United States. There's 5 classes. Teachers number 3. John, talk to you tomorrow.
Goodbye.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?